Hello and welcome to the ISRK Podcast. I'm your host, Kumar Vikrant. I'm a doctoral candidate at the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, Hanyang University, Seoul. ISRK, that is Indian Students and Researchers in Korea, is a voluntary support group that works towards the benefit of the Indian diaspora in Korea. So on today's episode, I have the pleasure to be in conversation with Mr. Arkaprava Roychaudhury, who is a PhD student at Chungnam National University, Daejeon. Daejeon is a major city outside Seoul. So, Mr. Roy, thank you very much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
No problem.
Mhm. So you have been involved in molecular biology research, right?
Yeah.
So you have the experience of working both in India and Korea.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so can you briefly contrast between the research culture between the two countries and also how the temperament varies between these two countries, India and Korea?
So in India, I did my undergraduate and postgraduate in SRM.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, our department was pretty good. So we had a lot of research experience there, but as a private university, funding was always an issue.
Ah, I
So
see. Mm.
yeah, so funding was there, but it was not like at disposal like it's available here.
Mm.
So in that cases, yeah. So if we wanted to do an experiment, we had to think 10 times before in India before doing whether we can afford it or
So
not. But
the
here it's like,
yeah, so
yeah, you
the
can do it.
SRM is in southern India, right? In Tamil Nadu, I guess. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I also worked in NCBS for a year.
Mm-hmm.
So in NCBS, it was a little bit better. So you can understand the difference between government institutes and private institutes in India
Ah.
and how the difference works
Mm.
there. And so the research in NCBS is like what I'm doing in Korea right now. So it's
Okay.
almost same.
Mm. Okay. So 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 building upon that, in recent times, we are observing that lots of Indians are moving to Korea for either for their masters or PhD, and lots of people after completing their PhD are moving abroad, specifically in Seoul and neighboring metro cities. So why do you think that is? Maybe from my personal experience, I think because maybe the research fund is readily available and Korea is um, like on the forefront of tech industry and all sorts of stuff. So how do you see that now? What are your thoughts on that?
Mm, I have known people who are like moving to Seoul for, I think they want in Daejeon specifically. If
Hmm.
you tell like Daejeon is a like more educational city, like
Ah, I see.
you'll find, yeah, so you'll find like all the institutes like Institute of Basic Science,
Mhm.
in like all Korean major institutes, the central institutes of Korea. So they
Mhm.
are all located here.
Mm.
So this is like an education city. So and it also has a lot of tech things going on. So people like get their education from here and then move to either Seoul or Busan,
Ah,
like that.
yeah. So I
So
actually, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. No, so because here there are companies who are like, as you told, that Korea being on the like forefront of technology.
Hmm.
So companies are based out of Seoul and Busan, like
Yeah,
the
that's
metro
right.
city, main
Mhm.
metro city. So I think that's, although cost of living is much higher, but I think the standard of living and the salaries and pay scale is way better than in Daejeon.
Mm. Yeah,
Mm,
so I also wanted to ask you about because I live in Seoul and
yeah,
lots of people also who come to Korea live in Seoul and people outside Korea also primarily know about Seoul and cities like
yeah,
Busan. And also
yeah.
many of the premier institutes like Seoul National University or Korea University, they all are based in Seoul. So
Yeah.
how do you compare between the atmosphere in Seoul and Daejeon, and what do you think the advantages or disadvantages are? And can you briefly elaborate on this?
I think if you want to, Daejeon does not have a lot of
Mm.
like, it has kind of activities if you want to do outside your university. So that's the main thing,
Mm.
because people who are coming for masters or PhD, their main focus is research and studies.
That's right.
So yeah, so outside that, if you want to have something else, so Daejeon does not offer a lot of things. But if you consider Seoul and Busan, it has like so many things.
Yeah, maybe because
So
it's more metropolitan or it's
yeah,
like
exactly. With
yeah.
more foreigners and stuff like that. So here like two major institutes, Chungnam and KAIST,
Oh,
which
yeah.
has most foreign students.
Mm-hmm.
So except that, like there's like pretty normal, like not a lot of you won't see a lot of foreigners. You will see a lot of foreigners,
I
but
see.
consider comparing to other cities, like smaller cities. But considering comparing to Seoul, it is
Mm-hmm.
like way lesser. So I think that one more, like the diversity is quite less in Daejeon. In
Mm-hmm.
Seoul and Busan, it's quite more.
Mm-hmm.
And the other things are, yeah, you get things here very cheap. Actually, if you consider
Yes,
things,
yes, yes.
Seoul and Busan, it's way cheaper than that.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
And
because I
yeah,
actually saw a list. I think it was Forbes or some other, like Seoul was in the top 10 most expensive cities in the
yeah,
world. So I think that is a major advantage of being in Daejeon. I think you can save up
yeah,
on, yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
that
Yeah.
is one of the main things. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So how long does it take to reach Daejeon from Seoul? I think it's 1 hour by KTX.
Yeah, 1 hour by.
Mm. Okay. So I wanted to ask you, like, how did you join your current research group? Like, how did you hear about it, and how did you come to do molecular biology research in your present lab?
So I was reading a paper one day. I liked the research what they did, so I emailed the professor.
Ah, okay. So you
I
directly
really
emailed.
like I really like your work. I'm looking for a PhD position. I
Mhm,
have experience in this field.
mhm.
So can I join your lab? And I was like, yeah, go ahead, join my lab. It was like,
So it was fairly streamlined.
yeah, absolutely. I email like probably when I was looking for my position, I emailed 161. I sent 161 emails.
Wow.
So it was not like specifically only to
Mhm,
Korea. So it was all over the world.
mhm,
Then I got accepted in a few universities in Germany, one in Switzerland, one in the US, two
mhm.
in the US. But here the research which they were doing was exactly what I was doing in India. So it's just same,
Ah,
everything is same, only the disease which we are focusing on in India, it was different. Here it's different. So else everything is same. So I wanted to continue the research in the same field. So I thought this is perfect. So I just moved here.
so
So I
the
selected.
professor's research field was in alignment with your interests.
Yeah.
So can I ask, can you briefly share like what kind of stuff you work on? I know that it will be fairly technical, but can you just briefly give an overview so that we can understand a bit?
Sure. So my department here is molecular biology and
Hmm.
my major is molecular functional biology.
Okay.
So what we predominantly focus on is gene editing and disease modeling.
CRISPR and others.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we use CRISPR to make genetically modified organisms.
Mm-hmm.
So we work here with zebrafish in our lab because zebrafish is a very new model and which our genomic
Sensitive.
similarities are around 70 to 80%,
Ah,
71% to be.
I
Yeah.
see.
But mouse, we also use mouse, but
Mhm.
zebrafish is more readily available. So use, and it's very easy to manipulate your gene in zebrafish.
Mhm. Ah, I
So we
see.
use zebrafish as our disease model, and we model several kinds of like mental disorder diseases like schizophrenia,
Mhm.
Parkinson's, so autism. So what we are trying to do is we have
Mhm.
patient data from all over the world. Our
Mhm.
collaborators, we have collaboration like in the US or Australia, every in the Europe. So where they are collaborators from hospitals. So hospitals will have patients who has similar kind of diseases.
Mhm.
So we get the data from the patients and then we model the disease in zebrafish.
Ah, I
And
see.
then and then we try to see what therapeutics will further work or what therapeutics which we can use for those patients. It's
Mhm.
mostly focusing on personalized medicine eventually.
Ah,
Yeah. So it's kind of that the lab's work is,
mhm.
that's the overview of the lab's work.
Mhm.
So I currently focus on motor diseases. So we have a novel motor disease
Mhm.
which we don't know why it happens, how it happens. We know part of it. So that's my thesis. We will find out what's going on there. So
Yeah. Hopefully you
yeah,
find it. Yes.
yeah.
So,
So there are like, yeah. So I focus on this motor disease which is involved in rhythmic movement. I don't know whether you have heard of it, called central pattern generators. So
Well,
it helps. Yeah, it's like rhythmic movement. All your rhythmic movements, your heartbeat, your muscles, everything is controlled by that.
they are like involuntarily controlled, right? Body manages
Yeah, yeah,
itself.
yeah. Kind of both voluntarily and involuntarily.
Okay.
So yeah, so those are controlled by your spinal cord and your interneurons and your motor neurons.
Mhm.
So we are trying to find out which interneuron is involved in that disease.
Well,
So
sounds
we are still
sounds fascinating. So you must have been closely following the advances in the corona situation and stuff. You must be
yeah, yeah, yeah,
understanding all the vaccine
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
and all that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
very close to your area, right?
yeah.
Okay, sounds fascinating. Anyway, so many new students who are coming to Korea, they often contact me or other people, and one of their major queries is what will be their residential situation because they are not aware of how things work. Because when you consider being back home in India, most universities and especially like government-funded universities have hostels for inside their campus for people to live in. So how is the situation here in Korea? Like, can you briefly talk about hostels, dorms, and apartments and stuff like that? Because personally, I live in a private apartment. I have my own apartment, but many people try to live in dorms and hostels, maybe to save up some bucks and stuff like that. So can you briefly shed some light on the residential area near Chungnam National University? And yeah, can you elaborate on that?
Mm, yeah. So we have dorms in the campus, in campus dorms.
Mm-hmm.
So which is fairly similar to the rooms we get,
Mm-hmm.
which we get outside.
Ah,
Almost similar to calculate. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So people prefer both because staying outside, most foreigners stay outside
Yeah.
because it's more convenient for them,
Mm-hmm.
as you can cook whatever you want to. Or yeah, that's the thing because cooking because they are if inside dorms, so you have to eat their food like Korean food all the
Uh,
time.
so
So many people
so inside dorm the cooking is prohibited.
not prohibited. There is a common kitchen, community kitchen, but
I
I
see.
don't think a lot of people prefer that. And especially during COVID, everything is closed, so
Yeah,
you don't have that common kitchen anymore.
that's right.
So yeah, so most people most foreigners especially tend to move out. Like
Hmm.
I don't know any, I know very few foreigners who are living in the dorm right
I see.
now. Indians and foreigners, like Indians and non-Indians.
Hmm.
Yeah, so they prefer to move out, and then yeah, there are family dorms available, but they're a little bit expensive. So if you are living with your family, then you can afford it.
Mm.
Mm. And but for this for Chungnam, but for Kaist,
Hmm.
there are like several small because Chungnam and Kaist are like five minutes away. It's
Ah,
like
so
that.
okay.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
yeah. It's like just one road dividing the two
Mm.
universities.
So there must be lots of collaboration, right, between the two
Yeah, yeah,
institutes.
yeah.
Mm.
Everything is like together.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So it's like
So
a very, how to say it, like a favorable kind of atmosphere for research and education. I think so.
yeah. So just see students. You just get out of your room and you
Mm.
see 5,000 students walking by.
I see. So, mhm. So one of the, anyways, thanks for the clarification on that. So many people have a concern when they are coming to Korea because Korea is not a primarily English-speaking nation. Korean is
Yeah,
the primary mode of communication. So
yeah.
can you shed some light on that? Many people begin to learn Korean after coming here. So how did I saw that you actually have elementary proficiency in Korean? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
how difficult is to learn Korean and can someone really get proficient at speaking and writing Korean? And what are your thoughts on the language barrier issue?
I think speaking is the most difficult.
Hmm.
Speaking and understanding is difficult.
Hmm.
Learning, reading, and writing is not difficult.
Ah, I see.
It's quite opposite to how the Indian thing works.
Yes.
Yeah, because here reading and writing is kind of easy,
Mm.
like way easier than I would say
Yeah.
than Hindi or I speak Bengali. So both
Uh-huh.
of that, considering both of that, it's reading and writing is easy.
Uh-huh.
But speaking, being a foreigner, you don't want to make mistakes and like disrespect
Yes.
the culture and the language. So I think that's the main thing.
Mm.
So yeah, speaking is different, is difficult. But other than that, there are barriers. But if you try to speak English, like
Mhm.
people around you will see that that if you try to speak Korean,
Yeah.
so people around you will see that, oh, you are trying, and they'll appreciate it.
I see.
So that's the thing. But you can learn. I have seen people who has learned Korean in 1 year, because
Mhm.
I came under a regular fellowship, but there are also other fellowships called KGSP and
Ah, yes.
KGSP.
Mhm.
Yeah, so KGSP has 1 year Korean language.
KGSP is basically the Korean government sponsored scholarship, right?
Yeah. So there people come for like 3 years of master's program, 2 years of research, and 1 year of Korean language.
I see. Language
Yeah, yeah,
and cultural integration, right?
yeah.
Mm.
So there people are learning Korean language in 1 year.
Mhm.
So it's not that you can't do it. You can do it.
Of course.
I took like 2 months of Korean
Uh-huh.
language class, because every semester it offers foreigners to learn like basic Korean. I took
Mhm.
2 months of Korean language class. I can speak a little bit Korean. Like I can go to places,
Mm.
buy stuff, and like basic things I can do. I
Mhm.
can read and write everything.
Mm. Oh, that sounds nice. So within the university, I think the primarily mode of communication is English, I suppose.
Yeah.
In the lab as well, right?
Yeah.
So only when you go out into the city and you have to like interact with
Yeah.
the locals, then you may be
Yeah.
needing it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Exactly.
I see. Also, you briefly touched upon KGSP and others. So can you briefly elaborate on these scholarships and the funding scenario in Korea? And specifically, for example, in if you are comfortable with it, can you share what kind of funding do you receive or what kind of funding your lab operates on?
Yeah. So basically, what I know, there are like
Hmm.
two or three basic fundings throughout Korea.
Hmm.
One is, except KGSP. KGSP is, I'll talk about KGSP
Ah,
later.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So first, if you come to Korea directly, like how I applied and came,
Hmm.
I was under BK scholarship at first.
Okay.
BK is like Brain Korea 21 plus global scholarship.
Ah,
Yeah,
I
it's
see.
like foreigners. Yeah. So, but the BK has to be renewed by the department after every 4 years or 5 years. I
Hmm.
think, yeah, 5 years. So after 5 years, the department might lose the BK scholarship, might not lose the BK scholarship
It
for
depends.
some reason. Yeah. For some reason, in last year, a
Hmm.
lot of departments in our university, they could not get the renewal.
Ah, I see.
So yeah, so we were transferred to NHIS scholarship,
Mm.
NRF scholarship.
A National Research Fellowship.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, so for that, we receive around
Hmm.
$1,500 a month.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
nice. Yeah.
yeah. For BK, it was around 1,250.
Hmm.
Yeah. So these are the two main scholarships, but
Hmm.
these are for like I'm in biotechnology and like natural sciences.
Yeah.
But for engineering, there are more.
Ah, I see.
Engineering,
Mm.
yeah, engineering, there are different more kinds, because as we were talking about Korea being in the forefront of technology,
Yeah.
so they prefer engineering degrees like more.
Hmm.
They give more money. Everything is allotment is more. So they
Yeah.
have a few more kinds of fundings, which I'm not really sure about.
Hmm.
They have one BRL, which is Basic Research Laboratory, which
Hmm.
funds only postdocs.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. So there are like several kinds of fundings,
Hmm.
separate fundings for foreigners only.
Mm.
So these are the basics. But for KGSP, it's like 4 years of PhD funding, which
Hmm.
is $900.
Ah.
$900, but you don't have to pay taxes,
Mm.
and a lot of things are exempted from that.
I see.
Yeah.
Quite
So which
favorable.
is,
Mm.
yeah, but again, the funding is only for 4 years. So after that, you are on your own. If you don't finish your PhD in 4 years, so you are on your own. So you have to
I,
get a part-time job or do something else
yeah, or maybe
to live.
apply for a renewal or apply for something else.
Yeah. So that's kind of
Hmm.
which you should not be concerned about. But
Yes.
yeah, because funding should be available at your disposal.
Hmm.
So yeah, KGSP, for that, I think KGSP is kind of not good because of that,
Hmm.
and also because that language thing, you don't want to spend 3 years for a
Of
master's
course,
degree.
because for most of us, the primary focus is doing research, making a profile
Yeah,
better, and contributing
yeah,
to
yeah,
science.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
mm,
So it's good that you are learning a language, but
of course,
it
yeah.
should not be 1 year
Mhm.
focus. You
Mhm.
can learn it like 6 months, or learn it along with your research. But I
If
think
you
that
can.
that thing yeah. So I think that thing is like is kind of not well settled
Also,
yet.
yeah, also several people actually after getting their degree in Korea, they moved to several other places.
Yeah,
So
yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So that thing needs to be worked out. So yeah,
Yeah, of course it,
so
it, it depends on the individual. So
yeah. So NRF, I think NRF is the best. NRF is very good. They have good fundings. They're how the process works
mhm,
from
mhm.
getting the funding is very good.
Also, I think NRF is fairly transparent and you can actually see how
Yeah,
all the processes are going. So
yeah. And the research is very good. Like
mhm.
the translation of the funding and the research is very
Yeah,
good.
it's something I've observed in Korea. Like they are primarily
Yeah.
focused on how we can actually implement the research for the benefit of
Yeah,
society. So
innovation. They
yeah,
care
yeah.
about innovation.
Yeah. I see that is a major focus in Korea, and I'm very happy to see that actually. It's fairly important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. Anyway, so we have been talking for quite some time now, so I really appreciate you share like taking out your time
No
and
problem.
talking with us. So do you have any final words before we say goodbye?
Korea is a first. I would like to tell that thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure.
Then to future aspirants who want to come to Korea for both masters, PhD, and oh, I have like I'm seeing like undergraduate students are also coming to Korea these days.
That's right. I'm also seeing an influx of like increase in the
Yeah,
influx. Yeah.
which is good actually.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty good because Korea is getting better. Like
Yeah.
when I came like a year and a half ago, and
Mm-hmm.
now like there are a lot more foreigners in Daejeon. You can see.
Mm.
Mm. So it's a good place. Language will be a thing,
Yeah.
and people, yeah. So you have to embrace everything if you
I
want to
I think
explore a
that
new
is
culture.
the case almost everywhere, except you go to places where the English is their first language. Except like in also in Europe, you face the same situation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, if you care about like doing, if you want to do good research, it's a very good place to come, I would say.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much for the conversation. I really enjoyed that and hope you had a good time talking with me.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. Yeah,
okay, so thank you and I'll see you around and hopefully we can
yeah.
get you again on the podcast. Keep in
Yeah,
touch.
sure, sure.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast. Uh, Tune in to the ISRK YouTube channel for more videos. I'll see you soon. Thank you.